You had the best year of your life. You were up 30%. You made a fortune. We would lose our capital. Our employees would quit. Our customers would depart. The criminal, they would succeed for a while, eventually get shut down, and no one would succeed.
MicroStrategy CEO Michael Saylor has confirmed that the company is under no immediate pressure to liquidate its Bitcoin holdings despite prevailing market conditions. In fact, the price of Bitcoin needs to drop as low as $3,562 for the company to get a margin call to refill its leveraged position. BTC has fallen 95% in the first cycle from the top, 90% in the second, 86% in the third. To imply that BTC will fall from 69,000 to 500 as all the newbies in the space are doing, it would mean a 99.3% fall. This is why people get washed out in the bear markets, because nobody is being realistic or has any idea what they're into.
I think if you don't have property rights, then your life is hopeless. So anybody in the world without the ability to store economic energy in the form of property or in the form of a proper money can't plan for the future. I liken it to being a type 1 diabetic where you can't form fat. So if you can't actually store energy for the future, then by definition your life is hopeless. Can't plan anything in advance. You're living day by day, hand to mouth. And on the day that you fail to hunt or you fail to catch something, you go hungry, and after a few weeks of it, you starve to death. I think if you look at the history of the world, you can see a lot of desperation and desolation. Right, so the plight, maybe the rich Romans did okay if they didn't kill each other. The Gauls didn't do okay, right? The Roman Empire had like 1 million Roman citizens and 190 million serfs, and billions of people have lived without hope for quite a while. So I don't think the human condition's been great. I think that the best money that we had for 10,000 years was gold, but we know that gold is imperfect money, and we can trace thousands and thousands of wars to it. And we can trace tens of thousands of stories of people that saved their money in gold to have it seized or lost. If you go back to before Bitcoin, parts of the world had assets that they could use to store economic value, maybe the United States and Europe. But there are parts of the world like South America and Africa that not in thousands of years have actually had proper property rights or proper monetary assets. So their life has been hopeless.
Yeah.
And continues. They continue to struggle. Right? There are like 10 currency collapses in Argentina over the course of 200 years. Or the Russian currency collapsed in 1998. Mm-hmm. Right? So I think if we look at the history of modern currencies, right, the U.S. dollar is the winner in every war in the 20th century, and it's lost 99.7% of its value in 90 years, and is on track to lose 99.9% of its value in 100 years. That's the best one, right? So every other one was worse than 99.9%. Of living for the 8 billion people in the world is one question, which we could spend quite a while on. If you trace the cost of a house in Miami Beach in the year 1930, my home has increased in price 305 times in 92 years. Mm-hmm. The formal Bureau of Labor Statistics would suggest that, in fact, the dollar's lost 95% of its purchasing power over that time frame. But the truth is, 305x means the dollar's lost 99.7% of its purchasing power over that time frame. The implied asset inflation rate then is about 6.5% to 7% a year for 100 years. Saifedean and the Bitcoin Standard estimated that the U.S. currency and the European currencies pegged to it have lost about 7% of their purchasing power a year, or expanded at 7% a year for the last 50 years. Right, since Nixon went off the gold standard. But if you look at the currencies in the developing world that are weaker, like in South America and Africa, they typically are losing power at double that rate, so 14%. So what does it mean? It means that if you want to buy an asset and you're a working class person, up until the year 2020, you would have to increase your after-tax cash flows by 7% a year in order to keep up with the rate of inflation. And if you lived in other countries, you might have to increase your cash flows 14 or 15% a year to keep up with inflation. The formal government measures are CPI, but CPI is the lowest possible metric that you can calculate, and it's engineered in order to not go up in price. So the real inflation rate is double or triple what the consumer inflation rate is, and the distinction of why life is hopeless is because the currency is collapsing in value. If you're working class, you can't buy assets. You might be able to buy products and services that are highly manufactured with low energy content in them, but high energy content, unique, scarce assets get progressively more expensive.